Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real tonight. I want to talk about the one thing that a man finds most attractive, and I know some of y'all think it's beauty, some of y'all think it's body, some of y'all think it's sex appeal, style, or how you walk into a room. Now, don't get me wrong, all that might catch his eye, but it will never capture his heart. The one thing a man finds most attractive is confidence rooted in self-worth. True confidence is rooted in self-worth, not attention, and most people get that twisted. They think confidence comes from likes, compliments, texts, calls, and somebody choosing them every day. But let me tell you something real. Anything that depends on other people can be taken away by other people. If your confidence rises and falls based on who notices you, who calls you beautiful, or who stays, then you are not confident. You are dependent. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't panic when the room goes silent. It stands firm even when nobody is clapping. A woman who knows her worth doesn't need to perform for approval. She doesn't overtalk to be heard or overgive to be kept. She understands that attention is cheap. Anybody can give attention, but value is rare, and a man can feel that difference immediately. He knows when a woman is trying to impress him versus when she is simply being herself. One is exhausting, the other is irresistible. See, self-worth means you know what you bring to the table, even if nobody acknowledges it. It means you don't explain yourself to people who already decided not to understand you. It means rejection doesn't break you because you never handed anyone the authority to define you in the first place. And when a man encounters a woman like that, it shakes him a little because he realizes she is not with him to be saved, fixed, or validated. She is with him by choice. Attention-seeking confidence is loud, fragile, and insecure. It needs constant reassurance. It needs to be chased every minute. It feels threatened by silence. But confidence rooted in self-worth is calm. It doesn't rush intimacy. It doesn't force connection. It allows things to unfold naturally because it knows that anything real won't require desperation. A man may enjoy attention, but he respects self-worth, and respect is what creates lasting attraction. When a woman doesn't collapse at the first sign of distance, when she doesn't lose herself trying to keep someone interested, a man starts paying closer attention. He notices her discipline. He notices her restraint. He notices that she has a life, a rhythm, a center that doesn't revolve around him. And that makes him curious, because anything that stands solid on its own is powerful. Self-worth also means knowing when to walk away without drama. No threats, no speeches, no chasing closure, just a calm understanding that if something costs you your peace, it's too expensive. That kind of strength doesn't scream. It speaks through action, and men understand action better than words. When confidence comes from self-worth, love becomes a choice, not a necessity. You don't tolerate disrespect for companionship. You don't negotiate your boundaries for affection. You don't confuse intensity with intimacy. And a man who is ready for something real will recognize that immediately, because deep down, everyone respects what cannot be controlled. A man is deeply drawn to a woman who knows who she is and stands firmly on it, because identity creates stability, and stability creates trust. When a woman has a clear sense of self, she doesn't shift her personality depending on who she's with. She doesn't become quieter to be accepted or louder to be noticed. She doesn't abandon her values just to keep someone close. She remains consistent, and that consistency is powerful. A man can relax around a woman like that because he knows what he's dealing with. There's no guessing game, no emotional whiplash, no fear that she'll turn into someone else once the relationship deepens. Knowing who you are also means knowing what you want and what you will not accept. A woman who stands on her identity doesn't bargain with her boundaries. She doesn't apologize for having standards. She doesn't feel guilty for expecting respect. And when a man encounters that, he feels challenged in a healthy way, because standards don't scare a man who is serious. They expose a man who isn't. The right man steps up. The wrong man steps away. Either way, clarity is created and clarity is attractive. A woman rooted in her identity doesn't chase approval. She doesn't look to a man to tell her who she is or what she's worth. She already decided that. So when she chooses him, it feels meaningful. It feels intentional. A man understands the difference between being wanted and being needed. Being needed can feel like pressure. Being wanted feels like honor, and a woman who knows herself makes a man feel chosen, not used. Standing on who you are also shows up in how you handle pressure. When disagreements happen, she doesn't lose herself trying to win. She doesn't become disrespectful just to be heard. She expresses herself clearly, calmly, and firmly. She doesn't threaten to leave every time things get uncomfortable, and she doesn't stay silent hoping resentment will disappear. She speaks from truth, not fear. And that level of emotional steadiness builds deep attraction, because men are drawn to women who bring peace, not confusion. Identity also protects a woman from overinvesting too early. She doesn't rush intimacy to secure commitment. She understands that real connection grows with time, observation, and consistency. She watches how a man behaves, not just what he says. She allows him to show her who he is. That patience communicates strength. It tells a man she is not desperate for love, she is selective about it. When a woman stands on who she is, she doesn't compete with other women. She doesn't monitor who liked his photo or who's in his phone. She trusts herself enough to know that what's meant for her won't require anxiety to maintain. That self-trust creates an energy that can't be faked, and men feel it. Because confidence built on identity doesn't ask to be validated, it demands to be respected. Standards create attraction because they signal value, discipline, and self-respect, and a man can sense that immediately. When a woman has no standards, she becomes predictable, and predictability without effort kills desire. But when a woman knows what she will and will not accept, it changes how a man approaches her. He slows down. He becomes more intentional. He starts thinking before he acts, because he understands that access to her life is earned, not automatic. A woman with standards doesn't make ultimatums, and she doesn't issue threats. She simply lives by her principles. If something doesn't align, she doesn't argue it to death. she removes herself. That quiet strength is powerful. It tells a man she values herself enough to walk away without chaos. And let me tell you, nothing gets a man's attention faster than realizing he could actually lose you and you'd still be okay. Desperation, on the other hand, pushes men away because it removes all mystery and all challenge. When a woman bends too quickly, forgives too easily, or gives too much without requiring effort, a man stops rising to the occasion, not because he's evil, but because human nature responds to boundaries. Effort is inspired by resistance, not availability without limits. Standards also protect emotional intimacy. A woman who respects herself doesn't overshare her wounds too soon. She doesn't trauma bond in the early stages just to feel close. She understands that trust must be built, not rushed. That restraint creates depth. A man begins to feel like he is discovering her layer by layer instead of consuming everything all at once. And discovery fuels attraction. When a woman has standards, she doesn't confuse attention with intention. She watches patterns. She notices consistency. She values follow-through over sweet talk. That awareness changes how a man shows up. He realizes words won't be enough. He knows he has to demonstrate effort, reliability, and respect. And for a man who is capable of commitment, that becomes motivating, not intimidating. Desperation makes a woman abandon herself to be loved. Standards allow her to stay whole, and men are not attracted to women who disappear inside relationships. They are attracted to women who remain grounded, independent, and emotionally intact. A man doesn't want to be responsible for someone's entire happiness. That's a burden, not a bond. Standards also eliminate emotional chaos. When expectations are clear, there's less confusion, less resentment, and fewer power struggles. A man can relax because he knows where the lines are, and peace is attractive. A man will work hard to keep a woman who brings clarity and calm into his life. In the end, standards don't push the right man away, they pull him closer. They reveal strength, maturity, and self-respect, and a man will always be drawn to what he has to earn and what refuses to settle for less. Emotional maturity speaks louder than beauty, because looks may open the door, but emotional intelligence decides whether a man stays. A man can admire beauty from a distance, but he commits to emotional stability. When a woman understands her emotions, instead of being controlled by them, it creates a sense of safety that is deeply attractive. She doesn't react to every feeling as if it's an emergency. She pauses, she processes, she responds with intention. And that level of control tells a man she is someone he can build with, not someone he has to constantly manage. An emotionally mature woman doesn't play games to feel powerful. She doesn't disappear to manipulate a reaction, and she doesn't provoke jealousy to test loyalty. She understands that real connection doesn't need tricks. It needs honesty. So when something bothers her, she communicates it clearly without attacking character. She addresses behavior, not identity. That approach reduces conflict and increases respect because a man feels understood instead of accused. Emotional maturity also shows in how a woman handles disappointment. She doesn't collapse when things don't go her way. And she doesn't punish a man with silence, hoping he'll guess what he did wrong. She expresses her needs without shame and listens without defensiveness. That balance is rare, and rarity increases value. A man notices when a woman can disagree without being disrespectful and stand firm without being cruel. Another powerful aspect of emotional maturity is accountability. An emotionally mature woman can admit when she's wrong. She doesn't rewrite history to protect her ego. She doesn't shift blame to avoid responsibility. That honesty builds trust quickly. A man doesn't feel like he has to constantly defend himself or prove his intentions. He feels like he's dealing with someone fair, and fairness creates emotional safety. Emotional maturity also means knowing when to let things go. Not every issue needs to become a full argument. Not every mistake needs to be revisited repeatedly. A woman who chooses peace over control shows wisdom. She understands that harmony is not about winning, it's about understanding. And men are deeply drawn to women who bring peace instead of pressure. A woman with emotional maturity doesn't confuse intensity with love. She knows that love is steady, not chaotic. It's consistent, not dramatic. So she doesn't chase emotional highs and lows. She values reliability, calm, and growth. And that energy changes how a man feels around her. He can breathe, he can relax. He can be himself without fear of emotional punishment. Beauty may attract attention, but emotional maturity earns commitment. Because at the end of the day, a man doesn't choose the woman who excites him the most. He chooses the woman who brings him the most peace. Peace is priceless to a man who is looking for something real, because no amount of attraction can compensate for constant stress. A man can tolerate chaos for a short time if the chemistry is strong, but when he starts thinking long term, his priorities change. He begins to ask himself how he feels when he's around you, not just how you look. If his mind is always tense, if he's always bracing for an argument, an accusation, or an emotional storm, attraction slowly turns into exhaustion. A woman who brings peace doesn't mean she is silent or submissive. It means she is emotionally grounded. She doesn't create problems to feel secure, and she doesn't turn small issues into power struggles. She knows the difference between expressing herself and attacking. She knows when a conversation needs to happen and when it can wait. That emotional timing is powerful because it shows wisdom and self-control. Peace also comes from trust. A peaceful woman doesn't constantly interrogate a man's loyalty. She doesn't check phones, test faithfulness, or accuse without evidence, not because she's naive, but because she trusts herself enough to know that if a man disrespects her, she will leave. That confidence removes fear from the relationship. And when fear leaves, intimacy grows. A man feels peace when he doesn't have to perform to be accepted. A woman who brings peace allows him to be human. She doesn't punish vulnerability. She doesn't weaponize his weaknesses during arguments. She creates a safe space where honesty is met with understanding, not judgment. That safety bonds a man emotionally far deeper than physical attraction ever could. Peace is also consistency. A peaceful woman doesn't love intensely one day and withdraw completely the next. Her mood doesn't dictate the stability of the relationship. She is steady, predictable in the best way. And that steadiness allows a man to invest without fear. Because uncertainty makes men cautious, but peace makes them commit. When a woman values peace, she doesn't entertain unnecessary drama. She doesn't engage in gossip, jealousy games, or emotional triangles. She protects her energy, and a man notices that. He notices that life feels simpler with her, lighter with her, clearer with her. He starts associating her presence with relief instead of pressure. At some point, every man realizes that peace is not boring, it's luxury. It's the difference between surviving a relationship and enjoying one. And once a man experiences peace with a woman, he becomes very protective of it, because peace is rare, and rare things are always the most valuable. Consistency between words and actions is what turns attraction into trust, and trust is what makes a man stay. Anyone can say the right things. Anyone can promise love, loyalty, effort, and forever. But a man watches behavior more than he listens to words, because behavior reveals truth over time. When a woman says one thing and lives another, it creates confusion. And confusion slowly erodes attraction. But when her words and actions align, it creates a sense of reliability that is deeply appealing. A woman who is consistent doesn't make emotional promises she can't keep. She doesn't speak out of temporary feelings and then act surprised when expectations are created. If she says she cares, she shows it in how she treats a man. If she says she needs space, she actually takes it instead of using distance as punishment. That clarity removes emotional games from the relationship, and men are drawn to clarity because it makes them feel secure. Consistency also shows in boundaries. A woman who says she won't tolerate disrespect and then stays silent when it happens teaches a man that her words don't carry weight. But a woman who calmly enforces her boundaries every time without yelling or threatening, commands respect, she doesn't need to repeat herself. Her actions do the talking, and that firmness makes a man take her seriously. Another powerful form of consistency is emotional steadiness. A woman who reacts wildly one day and lovingly the next creates emotional whiplash. A man never knows where he stands, so he stays guarded. But a woman whose emotional responses are measured and predictable creates safety. He doesn't feel like he's walking on eggshells. He feels like he can be himself without triggering chaos. That emotional reliability is rare, and rarity creates value. Consistency also means integrity when no one is watching. A woman who treats people well, even when she gains nothing from it, shows character. A man notices how she handles